Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really excited about today. This video is going to be like a mini series in the Dodge Ram NV4500 swap. This is going to be the transfer case disassembly and reassembly. Today we're just going to disassemble the transfer case. We're going to take a measurement of the input shaft outer bearing, and we're going to try to see what size it is, because we're going to need to swap out the input shaft to mate up with the NV4500. Like I had said previously, the automatic 47RE has a 23 spline. We need a 29 spline, and I'll try to link in the description a really awesome write-up by Torque King 4x4. I'm not sponsored or anything by them, but I thought it was awesome information that will kind of tell you what you're looking for this input shaft. I didn't know, so I thought it was good information. I'll have it in here. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the transfer case and try to take it apart. Alright guys, I've never disassembled something like this before, so this is my first time for this. So I kind of don't know 100% what I'm doing. Kind of do know what I'm in for, so we'll try our best. I notice these are 15mm bolts here on the back of the output shaft and the tail housing on the transfer case, and this is just the seal that sort of holds it on. That needs to come off. And I got it on a pan just in case it leaks. The factory one has like 3 ridges for the seal here. So we're going to remove that. I think we remove this guy. These are 15mm bolts. Alright, that's cool. This just comes off. That's good to know. I'm going to stick these bolts kind of back where I found them, just because I don't want to lose them. There's silicone in the bearings. This is so annoying. And then you just got to take yourself a pair of snap ring pliers. I guess these are called locking pliers. I'm not sure. I got mine at Napa. It took me forever to find them because I guess nobody has them, which is strange. So got your guy like that. Should come out now from the inside. Now we're going to remove, I think I'm going to try to remove this sensor first, because I'm not sure what's going on with that. I don't want to ruin anything. And I think it might be a 13mm. Stuck in there. Alright, I can only find an 11mm, so we're going to use an 11mm here. Hopefully, probably just shattered my speedo sensor, so you probably don't want to use an impact for this. Great. Whoopsie. Alright guys, it seems like my camera kind of had shut off at some point, so I'm not sure what point we're missing here. I flipped the transfer case over, so this is the front flange. I don't think we need to even remove this. I've removed everything back at the stock tail housing, and this is what we got. So we had like a snap ring, this thing. We had 2 snap rings on the actual shaft itself, and you will get your plastic gear for a 241 DLD. I had to remove the sensor from the back of the housing just in case. I didn't want to damage it. We also had taken out the I guess this is like a bushing slash seal for the output shaft for the rear drive shaft. And then we took off the stock tail housing, and all these have been 13 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and 15 millimeter bolts. So 15, 13, 10. Right now we're just going to be removing this part of the input shaft, going to from the transmission to the transfer case right now. These are 10 millimeter. I'm just going to remove the rest of the case bolts. They should be 15 millimeter. Alright, the case should come apart. We got to be careful because this is the pump. So we're just going to gently pry on the prying locations, and there should be one on each side of the transfer case. I'm just using a screwdriver. Sounds like a Ridley Scott film. It's coming apart. It's nasty. Alright, so that's the inside of the case. Here is what we're looking at right here is the output side of the case housing. And this is the pickup tube, and this is the pump. There should be a magnet at the bottom there. It should just kind of come apart, I think, like that. And then this is the pump. Set that in there, and then here's the pickup tube. But man, there's a lot of, look at that baby. I'm gonna have to rinse out this screen there for that. Okay guys, so now we're going to try to remove the most important parts to this, so that we can hopefully get these separated. There's a snap ring on the input side, and this is for your front flange here. So we're just going to take snap ring pliers and try to remove. All right, we got to remove this. This has got our input shaft seal. So we'll probably we will be needing to replace this, and it's very you have to be very careful about the orientation because this hole is where the oil feed is, so gotta be careful about that. Got a snap ring right here holding the input shaft in. You gotta remove. Alright guys, what I was able to do, I was really struggling to get this shift collar out with this peg that goes for your range selector, and I was really struggling to get this out. And what I was able to do was push down forward on this range selector plate and wiggle this out to the side down below in the transfer case. So this really helped a lot to remove this. So now we're trying to get to this part, which is really important. There's a snap ring in here that we need to remove. So we're going to do that. It's really important to do. So this should come out. Now we should get the whole planetary and input shaft out as a whole assembly. Here we are. That's what we want right there. This is super important. Now we just need to measure the input shaft bearing size. So I'm going to take this apart as well. This is what's really important, and what we're kind of making this whole video about actually is this unit right here. Alright guys, so now what we're going to try to do is remove this input shaft, because this is pretty much what's holding me up right now, only from getting the whole thing assembled. So there's a snap ring in here, it looks like. Looks like there's two places to pry up on it, so use a screwdriver, see if I can get underneath there. So snap ring comes off like that. Okay, so now we need to get this apart. This is really important. So I'm going to keep that snap ring right there. So right here, there's a metal plate. This goes up. And now a plastic thrust washer that goes underneath. And now there's a bearing and a cap on the inside. So from my understanding, we should be able to smack this out with like a 19mm socket or just some sort of socket. And it should come up. Because this is what we're looking for right here. For some reason, I feel like I'm missing a plastic thrust washer, but I don't know. This is a mess. Alright guys, so I used a 13/16 inch socket and a 3/4 inch socket, and you're going to have a bearing, and there's a bearing here, and then you're going to have a cap that seems to hold everything in. We're going to drive it back in when we put this back together. So this all seems to need to be cleaned pretty good. The bearing surface seems to be fine. So we're gonna wash all of this and should be good to go. Yep, and this is the input shaft right here. This is what we need to replace. This is the bearing surface size that we're going to need to measure right here. It looks like I have a narrow bearing surface that we're going to need to replace this shaft with another narrow bearing surface. Alright guys, this is a quick update. This is pretty much the transfer case completely disassembled. So our input shaft and planetary gears are going to go in there, and then we're going to have our synchro ring, and we're going to have our range selector there, and then like our gear is going to go there, and the shaft for the input and then like output shaft are all going to kind of go in this section too once it's like reassembled. You have to make sure this whole housing is completely clean. My case has been taken apart before, so there's a bunch of silicone, but I've heard how the factory like silicone just completely shatters when you spray it. Your magnet goes down in there. I didn't realize when I was taking this apart that I actually have my magnet, and it's right there, and it was actually super cakey, so I guess it has not been maintained as good as I would have hoped, but that's all good. I cleaned it off and it should be okay. Now this is my the pickup tube that needs to be cleaned really thoroughly, and that goes into the pump over there. So we're going to put that together, but right now we're actually going to swap the input shafts. So I was actually able to get one from eBay. It's in that box right there, so we're going to go and put that in right now. I'm going to clean all our snap rings here and our washers, thrust washers and stuff like that. Everything is pretty dirty. Seems like everything is kind of coated in that metallic milkshake. It's not that good, so hopefully going forward I can treat this transfer case way better. It might need a rebuild at some point in the future, pretty much like everything on this case, but we're going to try to keep everything clean and thorough, putting it back together. So that's what we're going to do right now. So this is the automatic input shaft. right here. This is a 23 spline, and it's shorter for the stock, and it's actually like a lot thicker in here. Now this one I got from Superior Auto Parts. They're in, I guess, like Minnesota. I got it off of eBay. So this is the new input shaft, and you can tell it's like, it's a lot more open. It's not as thick. And I tested it on the output shaft on the transmission, the NV4500 behind me, and it actually fits pretty good. So I think we should be good to go there. Now, what we're going to have to do is drive in our bearing and then also our bearing cap here. But first things first, we're going to clean these up and then we're going to drive them in, just the way this, the opposite way we took them out. Okay, so we're actually going to drive the cap in first. So I believe we just are kind of looking at it like that. And we just drive the cap in, basically the same way it came out. So grab a socket, make sure these things are kind of clean. I'll grab my mallet, and then we're going to kind of tap it in. Okay, hammer's just fine. So we're going to tap in the new. So that's kind of driving down in there now. And my cap actually says 1 5/8, so I think it's 1 5/8. So we're going to drive it in there until we can't. And the sound should change, so you won't really hear, it won't really go in any further. Now, when I'm reassembling stuff, I'm super thorough in how clean I want it to be, so I make sure it's super clean. Okay, I think that's in there. So now we're going to take our bearing here for our shaft, and I'm going to make sure that the lettering is kind of facing up. And what we're going to do is drive it in there. I think I'm going to take a screwdriver and just finally go around the edges and just gently tap it in until I kind of get it started. Or I'm going to try to see if I have a socket big enough. Or even better yet, I wonder if this will fit. Yeah, so far I think we can kind of start it like this. So yeah, so I used the other shaft to start this one. So now I'm going to take like a screwdriver and see if I can drive this in even further. Or I might even try to find a bigger socket. I might have a socket that's big enough to fit in here, and just see how far I can drive that bearing in, because it's going to rest on the knob of the shaft that we're putting back in. Perfect. That's awesome. Alright guys, so I'm using a 30mm socket. I think I had picked this up a while ago. It's a 12 point. And we're going to see if we can drive this in. Yeah, it's going in perfect. Alright, I'm just really making sure I drove it in there good. I feel like it did. I was able, you can kind of tell like the sound changes, and I see that it's butted up against the bearing. So this is pretty much the main part of the reassembly of the shaft. So I'm just going to make sure it's nice and clean, and we're going to start to put it on the planetary gear. And the planetary gear, we kind of want it to sit on the shaft like this, like so. So we're going to try to line that up, and now the whole shaft can move or independently. So now we're going to get our thrust washers and our snap ring here. So from what I remember, I think it was the plastic thrust washer, the metal, and then the this metal clip. So it goes, we're going to do the plastic thrust washer right there, and then we're going to put our metal cap there, and then this is our snap ring that kind of sits in the groove here. Now we kind of want to start one side, and then you can kind of keep smushing it in, keep smushing it in, keep smushing it in, and then it should snap in eventually like that. So we got that in. I'm just going to grab a screwdriver and gently tap around the edges. Actually, I have a scraper right here that's fine too. And just see if I kind of got it in the groove. So really, yep, okay. So now our whole planetary gear set is completely assembled right here. It sounds okay, sounds good. We're gonna lubricate this a little bit when we reassemble it. But now this is ready to be put back into the transfer case. There we go. Just kind of had to give it a little jiggle. So now this looks like it's completely set in there. All fine and dandy. I wanted to double, triple check that I had assembled the input shaft onto the planetary correctly. And so I took it apart again, minus the bearing and the cap. Now, looking at it, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, there's two plastic thrust washers. So there's one on the back of the planetary here. Then there's your input shaft. And then there is another plastic thrust washer. And then that metal plate. And then there's the snap ring. So I had to just double check because I was like really making sure. I'm like, wow, I have a lot of play in my input shaft. And I just wanted to make sure I wasn't assembling something incorrectly. So now we're actually going to move on to putting the snap ring in, getting this rain selector, and then we're going to start putting in the shafts and the other snap rings and just start reassembling this case here. So I'm going to start by trying to set this snap ring in here, and then we're going to try to kind of start it on like one corner, and then you slowly push it in. Slowly work your way around. I might need a screwdriver or a pry bar or something. Okay, so I seem to get it over that lip. Now, all right, I think I just got it in. There we go, just like that. So I just pried around the edges and pushed on it and squeezed it with my hand a little bit and pushed on it and just sort of massaged it in, and now I just heard it clip. So now we should be good and retained. So we got the retaining ring in for planetary gears. That's good. We got our selection fork right here. So we're going to put that in like that. Now we need to start to assemble our shaft that goes in and mates with the splines on here. All right, we're in. So that was a process. So there's on your main shaft here, this big one, there's these brass synchro tabs that have to sit on top, basically be butted up against one of the splines on your range shift fork, like ring, your synchronizer ring here. There's synchronizer tabs on your main stock right in here, and that must sit. Basically, it looks like you're assembling it incorrectly, but you'll have like a spline, and then the flat brass tab will go basically right up on it, and that's how you know that you're in. So I just kind of gave it a jiggle, and it eventually went in. Seems like we're good. It's kind of a lot of play, I guess, in the full transfer case, but all right, we're good to go there. All right, we're gonna move on. All right, before we put this all back together on this side, can't forget your spring here, and then your washer that go on top of here, and then we're gonna have a snap ring that goes on the inside groove here. So, and then The case is going to be kind of staying like this for a while, so you might as well throw your magnet back in. So I'll put that back there. There we go. Sounds like it's snapped into place. Pushing it down with the screwdriver. Now we're going to still reassemble the other side. And there's a couple snap rings in here, and then there's a snap ring right here too that kind of holds it to the stock tail housing. So we're going to have to kind of give this a bit of a pull, and it kind of helps shift or pulls the whole stock housing back up. So all right, let's get to putting back the other side, and then we'll put this back together. And we should be together. And that's how you put the other side back on. So now we need to put the housing back on this end, and then basically put all the bolts back on to suck it back together. Just making sure my pickup tube here is A1. Alright everyone, so the input shaft has been successfully swapped. Still kind of debating on whether or not I want to replace this seal here for the input shaft that mates up to the transmission. My shaft is a national, or I'm sorry, my bearing is, not the bearing, I'm so sorry. The seal is a national seal, and it actually looks to be pretty fine. It looks to be okay, so I might seal this up and just, you know, put the bolts back on, and it's all good to go. Other than that, I think I'm going to need to replace the output seal for the drive shaft, because I think mine was leaking, plus I bent the one getting it out. I was told, and I've also looked into it, extensively that getting the OE one from the dealership beats out pretty much any aftermarket seal for your output shaft for your drive shaft. I lost like a bolt along the way, so I just went to Ace Hardware, and these are M10 by 1.5, and I don't know how long this is. I don't know, about like an inch. So you know, you can kind of just put an inch or an inch and a quarter size if they go all the way back out. So and I just did it with the flange, but we're all done. So this is all good. This will need to be adjusted, and I will show you that in the later video, but for the most part, the swap for the input shaft is 100% complete. Now we're ready to move on to other parts of the truck before we install the transmission, and then we can put the transfer case on. This will probably be put back on after we put the transmission in. So that's it. All right, guys, that's going to conclude today's video. This was just a disassembly of the NP241 DLD and basically the input shaft swap to mate to the NV4500. You're going to need probably some new seals for the input and output of the transfer case, so don't forget about that. I'll try to have as much information in the description and below as possible. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow the rest of the series and see how the rest of the transmission and engine kind of get bolted up together. And yeah, if you like the video, like it, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it, and comment if you have any questions. And I'll see you in the next set of videos.